and it was 48 hours of throwing up. So yeah, so we're back. Hey guys, happy Monday. I feel a little bit
That's a
better.
real entry into the webcast there, Ek.
Yeah, lost a lot of my hair over this past 2 days because I was violently ill and threw up. My hair falling out as it happened. I did actually get a real haircut, so there you have it. But no, but yeah, it was a anyway. We're not going to talk about that, but I'm better. I'm happy to be back. It's on Monday. It's July 4th, and we're going to talk about hockey today. But we have
July 4th.
it's August 4th, but we're going to talk about hockey today. I have a little bit of Dayquil in me, and I don't know if Dayquil will actually completely, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So that's why Kevin and Mike are here today, so that'll be good.
Drinking shots of Dayquil. There you go.
Yeah.
No, Ak, I had an interesting concert experience over the weekend. I went to go see, I have a wide variety of likes and dislikes in terms of music, and Bruce Hornsby is one of my favorites. I went to go see him and the legendary guitarist Pat Metheny play down in Chautauqua, down in southern New York on Friday night. Great show. It was pouring rain, but we were in an amphitheater. But it's getting to be a little ridiculous the way these venues treat people with cell phones. I understand that you can record with cell phones, and artists are, they don't want to hear ringtones. They don't want to be distracted. I understand that, and I'm not a moron.
You get in trouble, Mike.
Yeah, and I can mute my cell phone. It's very easy, but honestly, somebody came on stage and say no cell phones, no recording, no texting, no blah 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 blah. Okay, fine.
It cracks me up when they try for the no recording in this day and age. I have to say, I will give them that. you got to give them a little bit of, that's so retro of them.
Yes. Hornsby comes out, plays an hour. He plays a phenomenal set, and there's like maybe
music that should never be recorded and shared with anyone else in the entire world ever again. That should just exist in that one moment in time and space. Continue.
And by the way, Bruce Hornsby's website, you've got everybody posting posting recordings on his website, so it's completely But anyway, so he finishes his set, and the Yankees and the Red Sox are playing this weekend, and I just want to check the score. That's all I'm doing. I don't have microphone. I'm not taking pictures. It's not like Sarah McLachlan's on stage. I really don't need a picture of Pat Metheny and his wild hair. I check my cell phone for 2 seconds, and an usher comes down and says, "Sir, if you take the cell phone out, we're going to have to kick you out." I mean,
nice.
It was literally 2 seconds.
Nice.
So
boy, the thought of being kicked out of any concert where Pat Metheny is playing is pretty bizarre in and of itself.
Yeah. The rest of the show goes by. I want to beat the traffic, so I'm leaving at the first encore. And as I'm leaving, I'm looking up the score again because it's around 10 o'clock, 10:15, and the game is probably in the 7th or 8th inning. So I'm walking out of the venue, looking at my cell phone. The same usher comes up to me and says, "Sir, I'm going to have to take your cell phone."
You're what?
Yeah.
You're walking out of the venue?
I'm walking out of the venue. He says, "Sir, I'm going to have to take your phone." And I was like, "You're going to have to take my phone over my dead body."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not taking a picture. I'm not recording anything. What the hell is the problem? I mean, let's just say
Ted Nugent up in his ass, man. That's ridiculous.
Let's just say this. I think I know, like, after World War II, where the greatest concentration of Nazis went to, and that was the Chautauqua Institution.
Yeah. No, that is unbelievable. That's what I mean. Come on. You wouldn't get that kind of – you say, I wouldn't get this kind of treatment 15 miles that way in Canada.
More like 100 miles north, but I get your point, yes.
Well, I agree. And the funny thing is, my experience was a little different of at the Sarah McLachlan concert was this like my view was basically this, like a woman in front of me who decided to videotape, the entire show on her iPad, like, and I'm like, okay, that's great, I'm just like looking at that. I just think the idea of, first of all, taking photos with an iPad, I get it has a camera on it. I don't know why, but it does have a camera on it. For those people who don't have a phone that has a camera on it, which is what? How many people? So anyway, it has a camera on it, right? But the idea of holding it up like this, and then like the temptation, because whenever we're such humans, whenever we see a screen of any kind, like the worst thing in the world, like I'm sitting in like the second row of a concert one time, and there's Bruce Springsteen right there, and there's Bruce Springsteen, 25 feet tall right there. And I still can't help but look at the 25-foot tall Bruce Springsteen, even though he is literally as close to me as my monitor is here. I just we want to look at screens, so it's so freaking distracting. So I think, but phones. I mean, come on, that's just like silly.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, anyway.
Well, before we get into the show, I did see that movie I've been talking about, and I wanted to, Kevin. I saw Wish I Was Here, the
Zach Braff movie.
The Zach Braff sequel to Garden State, which is my favorite movie of all time, Garden State. Just
because you're in it.
Yeah, briefly, but it's still my favorite movie of all time. And I will support anything Zach Braff does forever. And he is, Scrubs was great, a great show for a while. Yeah, it got weird, but Zach's a great person. The way he raised money on this was through Kickstarter. And he had guys like Jim Parsons in it, who was in Garden State, but now has gone on to become giant in Big Bang Theory, as we all know. Right. But the first time I ever saw the guy was in Garden State as the crazy knight who was dating his friend's mom, and was having breakfast in a knight suit because he played it. He was a medieval times knight in New Jersey. Yeah. And then there's like, you're not a real knight, you're a comic, you're a fast food knight. That was one of my favorite lines of all time. But anyway, this movie, so they raised $6 million to make this movie on Kickstarter. And that was controversial because Zach Braff probably has $6 million to pay himself for it. But they raised this money, and so Jim Parsons obviously did it for nothing, because I'm sure any movie he does now probably is over that in and of itself, right? So, but and it was okay, and also how could you go wrong with a sequel to Garden State when the head actress in it is
Natalie Portman in Garden State.
Well, Natalie Portman in Garden State, but in this one is
Kate Hudson.
Kate Hudson. Can you go wrong with Kate Hudson in the sequel to Garden State? In my mind, it's like Almost Famous versus meets Garden State. This is just forget about it. This is awesome, right? Oh, and that wife is really sad movie. Just, I mean, and it's okay. I mean, it was still very good and very well shot, and it had a lot of Garden State-esque type. And my wife's like, well, it had a lot of the same kind of shots as Garden State. My wife's not like a movie person. She wouldn't be like, that lighting, and that reverse diagram. She's not one of those people. She's like, it just reminded me these similar shots of Garden State. I said, well, yeah, it's the same filmmaker, right? You directed it, so it's going to have some of the same things. I gave him every bit of the doubt, but it's a little bit sad. It's just a sad movie, and it didn't have enough of the, fun type things, although there were a lot of great cameos. A lot of people from Garden State were in it at different points, but playing totally different characters, but just hilarious. So I got it.
Out of 4 stars, what would you give it?
2, which I think is what basically Rotten Tomatoes is giving it. Basically people are right around there. They're about 50% or whatever. That's where I would go. But for me, personally, I would never not see this movie because it's everything. It's all the people. And I would see it again, and I will watch it again, and maybe even get more out of it, because Garden State actually is one of those movies you can watch 100 times and get tons out of.
Sure.
So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. But Kevin, seen anything lately? Watched anything before we start?
No, but I did see Zach Braff on Broadway last month in Bullets Over Broadway. He was actually played the lead in the Woody Allen play, a musical, and he was quite good. He did an excellent job, and we enjoyed. We saw 4 plays, and even though that's sort of an older one that we had all seen before as a movie, it was probably ends up being our favorite. So usually we like to see one with an actor that we've seen before or has some marquee value. But what I did over the weekend, which I joined 109,000 other people doing, I went to the exhibition game between Manchester United, talking about soccer, obviously.
Nice.
And Real Madrid at Michigan Stadium, and the biggest no soccer crowd in the history of American soccer has ever been that big. So, and it was just what you expect. There was a fight a few rows down from me, and but they know how to market soccer. Like Ronaldo had no business playing in that game, but he came on with 15 minutes to go and he got a huge ovation. And Rooney played for a half the game and scored an interesting goal. So all in all, as a hockey guy who also likes soccer, it was fascinating to me having seen both the Winter Classic and the exhibition game there. And the main difference is we all weren't freezing as we were at the Winter Classic. It was actually hot. But the traffic was just as ensnarled as it was at Winter Classic. It was just an absolute mess.
Now, could you walk there pretty much?
Pretty much I did. There's a mall, Briarwood Mall, which is about 2 miles away, and I parked there, and then I took a bus there. But on the way back, we hoofed it. My family was with me, and we just me and 43,000 other people walked the 2 miles to get to Briarwood.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a good summer outing.
The city of Buffalo was basically half empty this weekend because everybody was down in Canton for Andre Reed's induction in the Football Hall of Fame. It was really a touching moment because Jim Kelly was there and was I believe his second appearance after going through chemotherapy and radiation treatment for the cancer he's going through, and he looks better, but it's really sad because this guy, this is a guy that everybody idolized, and cancer is a horrible disease, and everybody has the hope that he can get through it. He's getting the best medical attention that money can buy. But a guy who's he's in his early 50s, and he looked like he was 70 years old, and he looks like he's been through a lot. But it was a great moment for Bills fans because Kelly threw a pass to Andre Reed on stage, and it was a great thing. Yeah.
The Kelly situation is interesting because he was such a public man. Like, as you know, in a previous life, I was a baseball writer. I also did a lot of NFL. And the USFL, and I came across Jim Kelly on multiple occasions, did a couple of one-on-one interviews with him, and he was a very engaging guy, and he was very public in his persona, and his battle with cancer has also been public, and it's I just think it's made it even more sad than it normally is because we know so much about him as a player, and he was a great personality, and now we're seeing him this very as I said, public, courageous battle with cancer. It's been very sad to see, just as Mike said, the deterioration. You hope all the best for him.
Right.
I mean, I remember who was the college basketball coach that was a very famous college basketball coach?
Valvano, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the documentary on that several times. You should watch that documentary if you ever get a chance. I think it's on Netflix. And it's just amazing. I mean, it really, as sad as it is, it really did later inspire a lot of people. Who are going through the same thing, and then so many people know somebody who's going through that. So, yeah, that's.
And we will all remember the ESPYs when they gave him the hurry up sign.
Yep, yeah, that was the greatest. I mean, if you've never seen this, you've got to look for it on YouTube. You can Google it, and it'll be the first thing that comes up. It's like the most amazing, heartwarming thing, and it's just like hurry up. This guy who's got like very little time, telling him to hurry up. It was just crazy irony. But yeah, I remember watching that whole documentary. It was the strangest thing when I watched that documentary. It was like one of those weird moments that you have by yourself that you wouldn't expect to have by yourself. My family we were at Great Wolf Lodge, which is a water park, okay? And we were waiting to check out, but we had so much crap with us. I had to call for a guy to come and help me bring the crap out. So I'm like, oh, you guys go and swim, and I'll be there. And because Great Wolf Lodge is so big, and there was like one guy, I ended up in a hotel room, with everything packed away, and just a TV on, and I'm sitting there for a half hour. Literally, I waited, and normally I would have been doing just like frustrated and been calling the office 10,000 times. But I watched that documentary, which happened to be on for that particular half hour on ESPN at that point, and I was just, by the time the guy got here, I was like giving him a $20 bill. I'm like, thanks, man, take care, good luck, because you really just felt it. So, yeah. So anyway, we'll get on to hockey. Thanks, guys. We like to chat a little bit. It's Monday. So no one really signed this week. Now, wait, hold on. Hold everything.
And I personally would like to thank PK Subban for signing a multiple-year deal while I was just en route to the Manchester United. That just made my life sweet.
No.
Oh my gosh.
What's even sweeter, Kevin, is sitting down Saturday morning and writing a well thought out column about how the bridge deal that Subban signed was a bad thing, and that more than likely he's going to go to free agency in 2 years, and then 5 minutes later he signs an 8-year extension.
And for those keeping track at home, it is August 4th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
And I'm Kevin Allen.
And I'm Eklund, and that is our intro for today. Sorry about that. We forgot about that.
That was
But yeah, well, I'm mixed emotions on the PK Subban thing. First of all, thanks for the last week of income for Hockey Buzz. I appreciate that because really, literally, this gave me something to talk about, and Montreal fans are so passionate. There's no question. But signing an 8-year deal and taking himself off the market for 8 years, damn you, PK. So now we have nothing to talk about with PK for a while. But yeah.
Not necessarily.
Well, that's true. PK's not going to go silently into the night. But
well, what's most interesting about this is, and we've talked a lot about the fact that players don't want to play with Canadian teams. And if there ever was a guy who had a reason to want to get out of Montreal, it probably is Subban. I mean, it hasn't gone smoothly. In most cases now, since the salary cap was introduced, it's been standard operating procedure for teams to identify their top core players and get them signed. No fuss, no muss. The best example we just saw, Chicago Blackhawks. It's been a battle for Subban to get a new deal. And then with all that going on, they still have to go to arbitration. They had to explain why they thought he was only worth $5.25 million in front of him. And with all that, he said, I'm going to give up my chance to earn $10 million a year because he might have gotten it.
Yeah.
I think he would have on a 7-year deal from somebody had he gone to achieved his unrestricted free agency. But he said, no, I'm going to stay in Montreal. So if I'm a Montreal fan, I'm very happy with PK Subban's decision that, hey, he put up a little grief, but he said ultimately I want to be a Canadian. And so, I think there's no greater commitment to a team than the one Subban just made.
And I'm with you 100%. Mike, go ahead.
Well, I mean, listening to the reaction to the whole arbitration hearing on Friday, I mean, I know I tuned into Montreal radio just to hear what the fan reaction was, and it was like the Ebola virus had been unleashed in Montreal. I mean, it was panic in the streets, and it didn't look good until Saturday morning when finally he signed the deal. Now, the one thing that I agree with what you said, Kevin. I think he wants to stay in Montreal. He said, after the signing that I'm glad to be a Montreal Canadian and I want to stay here the rest of my career, and everything that somebody who just signed an 8-year deal should say. But the one interesting thing is, and I think it was Kenny Campbell from the Hockey News reported that he doesn't have a no trade clause in the first year of the deal. In 2015, 2016, or in the second year of the deal, there is no trade clause. So there is a window there in the first early part of that contract where if Montreal says, okay, I think we're paying this guy too much or we're not getting a bang for the buck, that they have an out. So that's good news for Rack and good news for Hockey Buzz and maybe good news for PK Subban if things go sour there.
Nah.
And obviously he mentioned Jeff Molson, he mentioned Marc Bergevin. The one guy he didn't mention was ex-favorite Michel Therrien.
Well, we know he loves Michel Therrien.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to trade him within a year. I mean,
right.
I'm sure you put it in there just like some people have, catastrophic, insurance that adds on to the regular insurance. You put that in there just in case something, happens where they bring in a guy you absolutely can't stand. And
there would be nothing worse. There'd be nothing more unpopular for the Montreal Canadiens than
to trade Subban a year into it. So I just don't see that happening.
This is a town, remember, okay, that when what was his name? Alexei Kovalev, okay, who was pretty much an enigma in many cities he played, was released. Fans held a rally for him to keep him there. Don't forget, this is a town that loves their players with the capital A of Amour. This town absolutely adores his players, and PK is what he's done now, more than even solidifying the defense and more than solidifying everything. I think he's actually made the Canadiens legit in other stars' minds. I think that was a big part of this deal that people have to remember, that this team didn't have any stars on it really anymore, and this is a team that's had stars on it all the time, Kevin. Now here they are now they finally have one back, and now they have PK for a while, so then when they go to get other UFAs, They look at, I'll tell you flat out. I remember talking to Danny Briere when he was looking at teams last summer before he signed his deal with Montreal, and he said, I looked there. I saw PK Subban. They got a great defenseman, and they got a great goalie, and that matters to players.
Yeah, it does. And the other thing I'd bring up too is, again, all I can gauge this by is, the reactions from my readers. Everyone wants to blame Montreal for this entire mess. You can't be too sure of that because we don't know exactly what the negotiations was. I mean, maybe he just came down to $9 million.
And that was what was sounding like at the end, because there was definitely stuff that was going around that was making it sound like there's so much PR coming out on both sides, and it was a perfect out for them to use Molson in this, Mike. It's like, okay, Molson, he comes in and saves the day, and he allows the Canadians who were, we're not going to get off their number, budge off the number. Well, we have to budge up, even though they're probably after they're done with the arbitrator, the Canadians were probably saying, we have to get off this number.
Right.
But Molson comes in and saves the day, and that's good for the owner, and that's good for the team. And
I've got to repeat my mantra now. 8 years from now, this what's the salary cap going to be? That it's not totally unthinkable that it could be $90 million, and that'll only be 10% of the cap at that point.
And you're right. And 8 years from now, we're going to be having another lockout. So let's not forget that either, right?
No, actually, maybe you and Mike will be having a lockout. I may be wandering around Europe in a backpack.
You'll be hiking from Prague to Amsterdam.
Vienna. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no. So I don't know. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, it's a obviously we knew the move that had to happen. It was sort of inevitable, even with the the doom and gloom that was coming out of the press conferences after the arbitration. You just still felt like, okay, this is going to get done, and it did. I got done for more than I thought. I mean, this is definitely a case where the Canadians balked. They had no choice. And it kind of brings me to my next topic, which is Ryan Johansson, who is probably the next. Is definitely not in the same sexy category as PK Subban from any perspective, because PK Subban is one handsome man. But Ryan Johansson is he's up in Columbus, and a lot of people are starting to panic on this deal because he's the superstar, he's the relatable figure. And in talking around and just talking to people, I kind of get the impression, Kevin, at least as I have, that they are going to sign him for a short-term deal, and it's just a matter of when. And it reminds me a lot of how they handled Bobrovsky last year, and I brought this up in my article today. Bobrovsky last year was coming off his big deal, his big Vezina deal. But if you went 1 year back from his Vezina deal, he had a horrible half season with the Flyers, ended up in the KHL for half a year. Johansson, if you go just 15 months ago, was in, obviously had a great year last year, but 15 months ago was playing for Springfield in the AHL, and was getting benched in the playoffs because he was a -8 in that playoff series against Syracuse. So, I think that, one person brought it up really well to me and said, why did Edmonton have to sign all those guys to those long deals? He says the Columbus Blue Jackets don't look at it that way. The Blue Jackets say, you don't have to sign. There's 4 years until Johansson's eligible for a free agent for UFA. They have plenty of space here. What are you hearing on this, Kev?
Well, just exactly what you articulated, that they, and it's somewhat ironic because it was the Rick Nash contract that sort of created a furor. That thought it was too early to give him the money they did, and now we have new people in charge at Columbus, and they're trying to do what everybody has long talked about doing, which is holding the line on that second contract, and getting more bridge deals and then paying the guy. I mean, I think he's arrived just based on watching him. I've seen a lot of them, but I don't know that for sure. And what they're saying is we don't either. We've only seen one good season here. And, I think probably their argument to the agent is, let's just watch, another year. Let's do a short-term deal here and, see where he's at in a couple of years. And that could be to your benefit, too. I'm sure that's how they're selling it. But, everybody's up in arms, but they don't really need to be because just as you said, we got a long way to go before he can actually leave this team. Now, the only danger is, and we've talked about this before, is if you tick your superstar off all along the way, and he feels like he's fighting with you every year to get what he thinks is fair, then you don't create an environment that he wants to stay in. So it's tricky business. But I ultimately I felt, and everybody around the league feels, this is going to get done, and they'll salve the wounds and move forward, because this is just part and parcel of what happens when you're a young superstar player, and they think it's too early, and you think it's not too early to reward you for that.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, Mike.
Well, I mean, it appears that NHL general managers are approaching forwards differently than defensemen when it comes to the expiration of the entry-level deal. If you look at, I mean, the only thing forwards I can think of off the top of my head that got the long-term extension after their 3-year entry-level deal were guys like Stamkos, Tavares, Evander Kane, top 5 picks who are franchise players. Most of these long-term extensions are for defensemen, guys like Yossi and Slava Voinov and Jake Gardner this year. They don't seem to want to give the forward that long-term extension. I don't know if it's because forwards aren't valued as much now as defensemen, or the escalating prices of defensemen. It's just more cost-effective for a team. I mean, I know that people in Toronto are very pleased right now with the Gardner contract based on like what Andy Green got signed for in New Jersey, and now in the wake of Subban, because through 2 years down the line, if Gardner has a couple good years, he could be asking for $6 or $7 million, and it would probably be within the ballpark of what he would be worth. But forwards, they seem more apt to go for the bridge deal. And with Johansson, you said it correctly. He split time last year. He only had 12 points in 40 games last year for the Blue Jackets. He had a great year last year, but you need to find out whether 2 years ago was more accurate of what he is, or last year when he took over things.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, it does. There was something that came up this weekend when I was talking to somebody about this stuff between my horrible illnesses that I had this weekend. I actually did get on the phone call with one guy. It was really interesting, and he says, what we don't do, and I've believed this before, and this is kind of a big discussion, but I think it's an interesting one that we don't have to necessarily. Where's my bell? I lost it. That we don't, but we don't. This is the thing. The NHL, he said, needs to learn from the NFL when it comes to salary caps, because salary caps been going on there for longer, right? And that they've figured out that you need this other thing, and that other thing is the franchise tag and the transitional player tag. Do we need this in the NHL? Was he brought to me. Like, this is like a situation where, okay, and if that was the case, Johansson, is he then dubbed as a franchise player? And what do you think about bringing the franchise and transitional tags to the NHL, Kev?
I don't like it. I mean, it's created such major problems in the NFL, and the franchise tag really does foster animosity between players that get tagged. I just don't like it. I just don't think there's any reason for it. The system that's in place is actually a good one here. It's just they just haven't always used it to their advantage. They've given the contracts. They haven't held the line. Like, if everybody held the line and it was accepted, like sports, basically contracts are all about precedent.
Right.
And what happens is when somebody starts giving somebody the good second-year contract, then they became in style, and suddenly everybody had to have them. And almost every contract is based on what someone else has already received. And but I do not like the franchise tag. I've seen that cause too many issues, and it just breaks down the relationship, in my opinion. I think that would happen for sure in the NHL as well.
Yeah, and if you took the NFL system, and a guy like Jarris Bird, who's a safety for the Bills or for last year, who they franchised and now is playing, I believe, in New Orleans, if you put the franchise tag on a player, you're guaranteeing him a top 5 salary at that particular position.
Right.
But it's only on a 1-year contract. Now, I mean, the thing is with NHL players, it's not, Jairus Bird is a safety. He would have been paid as a safety. There are guys who play left wing and centers. First of all, how do you determine what
Right.
position?
No, it would have to be forwards and defense and goalie. That's how the 3 ways you could do it, right? We talked about that.
And if it's a top 5 forward, then you're talking about say say the franchise tag is being placed on Ryan Johansson, and that system is in the NHL right now. Then you're saying that Columbus is going to pay Ryan Johansson probably $8 million on a 1-year contract because they slapped a franchise tag. They would have to sort of change the system around to make it more applicable to the way the NHL salary structure is. And I don't know how they would really do that, but I think, as Kevin said, I think it would be a big can of worms. The one thing I like is something similar to the NBA, having a Larry Bird exemption where a team can, pay a player more but not have as much of it count against the cap. Now that might be an advantage to big money teams like Philadelphia and Toronto who have the money to spend.
It definitely would be.
But still, I mean, it'll also, for teams who want to keep their players rather than allowing them to go someplace else when they can't afford them, because of maybe the cap room, but also because they can't afford it. I mean, it might be a partial solution.
This would get me kicked out of any kind of players association meeting that I would ever go to. But my theory has long been that a salary cap and guaranteed contracts don't belong together. I think that's why the NFL's salary cap works more than the NHL's does at times, because basically, the NHL guys can get cut, and I just think that I've had since the salary cap came into the NHL, my biggest argument against it has been that, and now the NFL players don't have nearly the juice as the NHL players do apparently, because the NHL players are not going to ever give up guaranteed contracts. I mean, that we would miss a year or 2 years on that one. I don't think there's any question about that. They've made that known.
The NFL is the only one that doesn't have guaranteed contracts.
Right, it's the only one that doesn't, and the NFL is the one that probably needs it the most.
Yeah, absolutely. That's they have the greatest peril of injury, and they have the worst setup.
Yeah.
Worst contract of any group.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. It's brutal. All right, last topic I have for today, for this Sunday, an article I saw on SportsSimplified.com, which is a really good website. SportsSimplified.com. Just check it out at some point, and here it is. I'm going to do a screenshot of this for you guys at home. Okay, this is the article here. It is, whose career is better, Wayne Gretzky's or Michael Jordan's? All right, so when you get into here and you see what they have here, and I know this is a little bit small, and I wish I could figure out a way to make it bigger, so I'll read some of it to you. But the gist of it. Number ones in point. Both are number one in their sport in points per game, all time. Gretzky's a 15-time All-Star. Jordan's a 14-time All-Star. Gretzky's is an 8-time first team NHL All-Star. And Jordan's a 10-time first NBA All-Star. Both are, Gretzky's all-time points leader. Jordan's third all-time in points. Gretzky has his jersey numbers retired league-wide. Jordan is a 9-time all-defensive first-team player.
Yes.
You look at the four cups there are very easy to say. 6, basketball trophies. See, that's how well I know the NBA. Whatever that's called.
Larry O'Brien Trophy.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. MVP, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right, for Gretzky, and 5 MVPs for Jordan. There's a ton of things here. So, Finals MVP, 2 for Gretzky, 6 for Jordan. And that's not really a Finals MVP. Of course, that's the playoff MVP in the NHL. But let's just, Gretzky played on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. Jordan played on 2. That's, counting the Indianapolis Racers as a team, which is kind of a bit of a long shot. So, but anyway.
That's like counting Brett Favre with the Atlanta Falcons, which,
there's no question these two players have paralleled to a degree, and there's a bit of a, they both redefine their sports. I think that's without question, right? They both changed everything. These are the game changers of their sports. And in our lifetimes, or at least my lifetime, and I think all of our lifetimes, maybe the best players that ever played their sport, right? Whose career is better is the question. Okay, so I won't tell you how many people, there was a lot of people that voted, and I won't tell you what their answer is until I hear your arguments here. So, Kevin,
Yeah, to me, it isn't close. I mean, you have to look at it two different ways. But if you're looking at who had the greatest impact in their sport as a determining factor, who had the best career, I think it has to be Gretzky. I mean, I said all the time that he was playing for in the National Hockey League that there should have been a tariff for all teams to pay Gretzky's salary because he was that important to the game. I mean, there were people in the United States who couldn't name a NHL team, but they knew Wayne Gretzky was the best player. Nobody got endorsements, but Wayne Gretzky did. He took the game and enlarged it. And for that reason, he just had such tremendous impact. And then on the ice, I think they're relatively equal. I mean, they both dominated, but Gretzky's domination was unprecedented. Like, before Jordan came along, we had other players that had, done things like that. Will Chamberlain, for example, in the NBA, who, sort of redefined the game. And, you can say Bobby Orr did in hockey, but, not like Gretzky did. Like, he made the rushing defenseman. He changed that, the way we looked at that, the idea of the fourth, forward. But Gretzky just took points to a different level, really almost stratospheric in terms of taking the game to a higher level. So, to me, even though it's close, and the only time I could make a case for Jordan is the NBA was just so much bigger. Like, his was a worldwide phenomena where people outside the United States knew Jordan, and his ability to make clutch shots. Very similar personalities, though, with regard to their ability to understand how they needed to act in order to maximize the attention toward them. I think both of them. I've met Jordan and interviewed him as well, and I thought there were some similarities in the way they dealt with the press.
That's a really interesting thing. I'd like to hear that. I mean, I felt, we've seen a lot of. I don't want to just start a quick tangent on that point, Kevin, because I was wondering if you had interviewed Jordan. The thing I was most impressed with Sidney Crosby, of any star that's come into the league in the time I've been covering it, like I wasn't there when Gretzky came as a rookie or whatever, but Sidney coming in as a rookie, I was the first player I got a sense of from talking to that knew his importance to the game and knew that his responsibility to the game, and felt like this is what I'm going to have to deal with 100 people around and it's okay, and I'm all right with it. And I can do, you know what I mean? Was that Wayne and Jordan as well, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll give you some examples. When Wayne Gretzky came and showed up at his dressing room, for the guys he knew, the national guys, the guys that have been around for a long time, there was a handshake, a wink, a nod, maybe punctuating his answers with your name. Well, Kevin, I thought right. This. And Michael Jordan was the same way. I interviewed him as part of a group of 4 journalists at the Atlanta Olympic Games, the first time that I interviewed him, and Haynes had set up the deal. And when he walked in the room, when he met each one of us, I found it interesting. He took his hand and he put it on our shoulder when he shook our hand and repeated our name. And I thought it's very similar to the way Wayne would have an introduction. He was introduced to Kevin Allen of USA Today, and he said, "Kevin," and shook my hand and put his hand on my shoulder. Just had real good people engagement skills, and Wayne was like that as well. Just a good people person. Wayne knew the writers in every city, very friendly.
Interesting. What do you think on this whole topic, Mike?
Well, I mean, I think both are, fantastic ambassadors for their respective sports. I also believe that they're not the best players in the history of their respective sports. I mean, I personally think that Bobby Orr was.
Hold on. That's another topic, but we will have that debate. But yes.
Okay. But no. Just as an aside, I mean, I personally think Bobby Orr is a more impactful player than Wayne Gretzky, but that's just my personal opinion. Some people of an earlier generation probably think Gordie Howe was a more impactful player.
That would be me. Yeah.
Yes.
I think with this, we may have a debate. We may have a topic for tomorrow, but continue, Mike.
Okay. I mean, the one thing, and as I said to you before we went live, Gretzky won 4 Stanley Cup championships in Edmonton, and then only got to the one Stanley Cup final in '93 with Los Angeles with a pretty decent supporting cast if you look at that team's roster, but never won after he left Edmonton. Jordan wins 3 championships before he retires. I think it was for 18 months when he went to go play baseball, and then came back and won 3 more championships in a second half of a career that he became a much better defensive player. He became a much better all-around player. He wasn't just the kid who scored 60 points against the Celtics early in his career and was a complete offensive force and dunking all the time. His game changed. Whereas I don't think Gretzky's game really changed that much from the beginning of his career. I mean, I think he slowed down a little bit, and but he's still the phenomenal playmaker that he was. But I think without the supporting cast, without Messier and Anderson and those guys in Edmonton, he didn't have enough. He couldn't carry that team, carry teams in St. Louis or in Los Angeles or with the Rangers on his shoulders. Whereas I think Jordan, in the second half of his career, the team wasn't as good as the first half of his career, and they still won championships against teams like Utah, who had Stockton and Malone. So I think Jordan was more impactful in his sport. But I mean, Gretzky's phenomenal, so it's a good argument, but I don't think there's no right answer.
If you were to start, let me rephrase the question just a little bit, because then I'll give my point. I'll just get a simple yes or no question, or no A or B question here. If you were to start a sport again, okay, you're going to start a professional basketball team, and you have Michael Jordan, or you get to start a professional hockey team, you have Wayne Gretzky. Which do you choose, Kev?
I'd have to go with Jordan, because the sport is just bigger, and it's just a bigger sphere of influence. I would take Jordan.
Yep. Mike, you would take Jordan.
I would take Jordan. I mean, the rosters are 1 of 12, and half of that roster usually doesn't play at all.
Right.
Whereas, you have a 20-man roster for hockey, and don't get me wrong, Gretzky's going to play the most ice time on any team, but that more than likely is 20 to 25 minutes, whereas Jordan in his sport is going to be on the floor probably for 40 to 45 minutes for a 48-minute game.
Yeah, so I think Jordan has a bigger impact, right? Because he has, because of the sport in general. Now, I am the last person who should be talking and getting paid to talk about basketball, but so I'll just leave it for what I know. But he just absolutely. If I was to say, when I think of the two's careers, I think of Gretzky as just unbelievable consistency, just beyond. I mean, he never went a game or two without being, or even a period or two without being great, and putting up points consistently all the time in any situation. But I don't think, and this is funny to say, but when I was racking my brain about this, to think about the actual most clutch moment of Wayne Gretzky's career versus the actual most clutch moment of Michael Jordan's career. Michael Jordan's career is easy, right? It's this shot that wins the championship, and we all remember that. I don't even remember when it was, or what year it was. But I as not even a basketball fan, have seen this 1,000 times.
There's a couple of them. The shot against Utah, and then the last second shot against Cleveland early in the career.
Right, that win it, and these incredibly clutch performances at incredibly clutch times. When I think about Gretzky, what was Gretzky's most clutch moment, Kevin, in your mind? Like, what was the moment?
No, that's a good one.
93 Game 7 would be clutch for Gretzky. I mean, against Toronto. I mean, that's the
right.
He thinks it's his most
the
best game he ever played. I mean, you could say Rendezvous '87 when he sets up Mario Lemieux. That was an international tournament and not for.
Right.
That was the end of the cup, but
yeah, not for a cup, but
there's not that Stanley Cup final moment where you can just say, okay, he won the game for them. I mean, he did win the game for them. He won the season, he won the series, but he just did it in a constant way versus being the player who's going to score that goal or break away at the last second. Like we saw Mario do it. I can remember Mario moments.
The goal against Minnesota when he walks.
Yeah, and even and that was the Stanley Cup final. But I do, with Gretzky, I can't really remember. I don't know, for whatever it's worth. What does that mean in terms of how great a player is, how clutch he has to be? Gretzky's teams, in a lot of Gretzky's Stanley Cup finals, he probably didn't have to be clutch. He didn't have to make that play.
Well,
it's not like
I mean, you could say that Gretzky's greatness is his consistency, his consistent greatness on, at all times. Whereas a guy like Messier, I mean, when they write the obituary of Mark Messier, what's the first thing they're going to write about? The guaranteed win, Game 6 against the Devils. That's
right.
Yeah, that's his signature moment. There isn't a signature moment in Wayne Gretzky's career in terms of clutch in the playoffs. He's just consistently a great performer. And then again,
right.
The only one
I think about the 50th goal into the open net, remember, in 39 games. That's a moment that I remember. I think it happened against the Flyers too, right? So I remember that moment. I remember the pass to Messier, of course, and the world famous, the CBC call that we've heard 1,000 times of that goal. But I just I don't know. It's an interesting kind of enigma about Gretzky's career that there wasn't that one particular money shot moment.
And of course, if there is one, he did it against the Maple Leafs.
Right, in his opinion. So there you go. But I don't know. It's a really, I appreciate your guys' opinions on it because I thought it was a very good. Now, and actually, to tell you how people voted on this, because a lot of people voted on this, obviously, it was pretty resounding. It was 87% went with Gretzky's career over Michael Jordan's career.
Wow.
And that's and that's a lot. I mean, that's a big percentage.
That because hockey needed Gretzky more than the NBA needed Jordan.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, they had transformed the NBA, before Jordan arrived, and they needed the NHL just needed Gretzky at that point. He put him on the map.
No, he definitely did. All right, we'll take a couple questions from the chat room, guys. So get your questions up as we continue here, and then we're gonna get out of here for today. A couple people have been asking about Simon Gagne, who I guess there were some rumors floated around in the Philly paper this weekend that Gagne could come back to Philly this year. I don't see it. I mean, and I know why it's being said is obviously Hextall, brought Gagne to LA and he's back here now, but yeah, I don't see that really. I like Gagne a lot. He's been a great player in his career, but I think the time has come and gone for Simone. At this point, haven't heard anything else on the other question that someone asked too. Was I haven't heard we haven't heard any rumors involving the Flyers at all. So I'll just kind of leave it at that for now. There's been nothing, and I think that, and I'm going to do a story on this tomorrow, so don't anyone steal it. But I'm doing a story about the fact that these first 2 weeks in August are the deadest times for rumors and signings. This is actually when August hits. I feel like everyone's like, okay, it's August. We're not gonna, if you're not signed by August, Kevin, you're in trouble.
That's right. You're done.
Well, we've talked about him before, but the one player that is sort of head scratching right now is Michael Del Zotto. I mean, I understand. Nashville walked away from the, or they didn't qualify him, so he's a UFA and he's 24 years old. I would think there's plenty of teams out there that are in need of adding a defenseman, and so far, to this point, I'm thinking now he's going to probably get an invite to somebody's training camp rather than sign a couple-year deal.
I think we're in the camp invite period. I think we're getting there. We're getting close to that, where players are going to say, okay, I'm going to go there. I think Del Zotto has options he just doesn't like.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
Yep. That's all very true. And, that teams that we've talked about this before, but he hasn't been good enough offensively for teams to overlook his defensive deficiencies. And, they were waiting for him to have the breakthrough season that never came. And so now everybody is, I'm sure somebody will give him an opportunity, though, because he's a first-round pick.
Someone has to. I have a little topic. I was going to stay on the line with Mike and Kevin after we cut off because I want to tell you a little story I heard about this, but I can't tell anyone else. Sorry to throw that out there, be angry and mean about it in that way, but I'm just saying.
No.
Yeah, it's something that we're going to talk about, when the kids go to sleep.
Well, okay.
Where's Duster Penner going? Dustin Penner going.
I like that name better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Todd Bertuzzi's another guy.
Yeah.
So I think he'll get a deal.
Yeah.
I had heard something about Penner in context with the Vancouver Canucks a couple weeks ago, but nothing came of it. So the problem with Penner right now is, I mean, he's never played well anywhere other than Southern California with the Kings and with the Ducks. His tenure in Edmonton was pretty much a disaster. I think he had one good year. He went to Washington in a trade at the end of the season last year and didn't make any kind of footprint at all. I wouldn't be surprised if L.A. or Anaheim, if they had the room to add him on a short-term deal. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. And he is not a quick forward in this league. Skating ability is preeminent, and he is not. He's losing his speed. So I don't know.
Yeah.
How effective he'll be at getting a job.
Now Bertuzzi was in Detroit this past year, Kevin, and as well as I've heard thoughts about that they might possibly bring him back. But do you think he still has game left?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if you believe he can stay healthy, he can have some value.
Yeah.
He still, has some skill. He can still find the net. He's still a big body. He can get in front. He's got great hands. He's really his talent level has eroded over the last year or so. But there are guys in the league who can't do as much as he can. So
right,
I mean,
that's the truth.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think there's, he's not going to make the difference on a team. But if you're looking for a 24th, guy, I'm sure he'll play for, near the minimum, and off you go.
Right. And they're still waiting on Alfredsson too.
Yeah, right. Alfredsson as well. That's another topic we'll get into at another time. But that's a bigger story.
They've got too many forwards. They've got an issue there, I think, with Alfredsson.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do now? You got so many players. And you can't lose younger players. So.
And the crazy thing about Alfredsson is this: the team that needs him the most in the NHL is who? It's the Ottawa Senators.
Ottawa Senators, right?
And it's just insane. I mean, did things just end so badly that this is not an option at all? Which is sad if it's the case, because this is such a player who was such a impactful. I mean.
In terms of a leader, yes, Ottawa could use them, but if you look at what Ottawa is doing this year and you look at the direction that you think Ottawa is going towards, the last thing they want is Alfredsson coming back, because I personally think they're in the Connor McDavid sweepstakes. I think he does nothing other than make them good enough that they don't finish in the bottom five.
They are right now, but I mean, is he going to make that difference? I don't think he makes that difference.
And does he want to go to a team that's going to struggle, at best struggle to make the playoffs, and probably his last year of his NHL career? I would think he'd want to go someplace like Detroit, where they can make the playoffs and maybe make a run in the postseason, or a place like Boston who needs another veteran.
Right. Oh, here's the last thing I have to talk about. Somebody threw a great thing up in the chat room just now, saying that Jordan would, this is Rossi871, said Jordan would do better in the new NBA than Gretzky would do in the new NHL. That's a good one. That's a tough one to think about.
And Babe Ruth would do better than both of them.
Yeah. in the new MLB? I don't know. I think Gretzky in the new NHL would be pretty deadly, actually.
Well, I think his point is in the new NHL, it's all about defense. I mean, if you look at the game when Gretzky was here, nobody was playing defense. They were, all the systems were pretty offensive, and your defense would stay with your man. That was.
But you could also drag. You could also hang a defenseman on Gretzky's shoulder the entire time. I mean,
you could, but that really didn't. That was sort of into the '90s. I mean, it was physical in the '80s for sure, and they tried to hit him. But the grabbing and holding on, really, in my mind, from what I remember, was in the early '90s, and the trapping, it was in the early to mid '90s. So. Like I know what he's saying. I mean, look how many like, are we saying that today's players aren't as skilled as the players in the 1980s? That's ludicrous. It really is. The game, though, has changed so dramatically because these kids are taught defensive systems when they're 5 and 6 years old.
Right.
I mean, you got mites that are trapping. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And they come in now having played defensive hockey their entire lives, and it's just harder to get points now. I mean, these guys are just as skilled as guys in the 80s, and in most cases, the skating is so much better now because they've all been going to skating school since they were 4 and 5 years old. And now a lot of these guys are they've got their own personal trainers. They've got guys teaching them how to take a check and how to throw a check, and it's these guys are gonna at some point you're gonna come to camp and you're gonna have an entourage with you of various coaches. So I mean I think the guy's point is well taken.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's a good way to end the show too. I really appreciate everything. You can find Kevin at by Kevin Allen, and of course on the USA Today, which is I can't misread every day, but definitely follow him on Twitter because you'll find out when he's posting his articles. And then Michael can be found on Hockey Buzz and at Mike in Buffalo, covering the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm Matt Eklund, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Take care, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. See you then.